Hey everybody, it's Josie here. I'm going to be doing a recommendations video today. So the reason I wanted to do this video is because I'm currently reading a book from a genre that traditionally I hadn't really thought would be great for me, or I wasn't that interested in, because I think I had a couple of bad experiences, and it kind of got me thinking about what I read and the diversity of what I read. So I kind of consider myself quite a diverse reader. I don't stick to necessarily one lane or one genre, one type of book. I like to kind of be a grazer and graze all sorts of genres and types, because you never know what you'll find. There are certain things that I like in books, like I love friendship tropes. I love interpersonal relationships. So for me, as much as I do love a plot, and a book does have to have a plot, but also I suppose I'm a very character-driven reader in the fact that there have to be some great character relationships. And so I was thinking about kind of the genres that I maybe don't read as much. One being historical fiction, particularly based around war and political issues, because it's just something that doesn't necessarily appeal to me, but it doesn't mean I don't read any historical fiction, particularly when it's more character-driven. And the other genre that I haven't traditionally in the past been that into has been kind of the sci-fi and post-apocalyptic books. And I know there was a real kind of run on post-apocalyptic when sort of the Divergent series and those kind of books had come out, but it wasn't really my kind of thing. And then at the beginning of last year, I read a book called Station 11, which is post-apocalyptic and really beautiful and more about the people and the characters. And I realized that those were the kind of books in that sort of genre and in the sci-fi genre that I love. And since then I've read a few that I'm going to recommend today that I really enjoyed, and particularly I think for people that are not that interested in the sci-fi or the kind of the mechanics or the creatures or the sort of what kind of goes around it, but are more interested in having that as a setting and having that as a driver and a premise. So having, you know, the apocalypse as a driver, but then the book being more about the relationships and how the people survive and how they interact. And I think that's what I love, and I think that's what these books do really well. I did read one that I'm going to mention here called Annihilation, that for me is an example of a book that didn't do that well for me. So again, it's kind of sort of sci-fi, a group of scientists, which I thought it was going to be really good. A group of scientists, female scientists, go to this area 51, can't remember, area 13, something like that. And they go, and there's been other expeditions that have gone out there and they've disappeared, or they've committed suicide, or something terrible has happened to them, and they send these women out. And I thought that was going to be really interesting. But what I hated about that book was it didn't really do much in character development. In fact, we didn't even get to know most of the characters' names except sort of one of them. And even then, she just wasn't very well developed. And the whole kind of creature element I find really boring. I didn't find it very suspenseful. It just was not the sci-fi book for me. And I know a lot of people love it, but that is an example of a sci-fi book that I just don't like. There was no relationship and character building within the story for me, so it bored me. So what kicked off me wanting to actually do this video is the current book I'm reading. So the book I'm reading is this one over here called The Last 8. And you can see I'm kind of about 100 pages into the book, and I'm absolutely gripped and drawn in already. This book comes out, so it's a proof copy, but this comes out either end of this month or beginning of April. And its premise is that aliens have come down and invaded Earth and killed almost everyone on Earth. And you've got 8 teenagers that are the last 8, and they get together and they gather in, sorry, this is Area 51, so in Roswell, and that's kind of sort of what happens in the beginning, and then the story really kind of kicks off after that. So I found the premise really interesting, and what I loved is that you do have all of this kind of aliens are invading piece, but then what this book is really about is these last 8 survivors. And I really love the main character. She's fantastic. So I am going to do a separate review on this book as soon as I finish reading it, which will be pretty soon because I want to know what happens. But while I was reading this, I thought, well, let me recommend some of the other books that I loved. So the first one I'm going to recommend is this one over here, and I mentioned this, Station 11, and I know a lot of people have read this and really enjoyed it. So Station 11 again is the world is basically imploded, and you have these groups of survivors that are traveling around So this was the reason things got really bad in this book was disease. And a disease wiped out most of the population. And then you have this book focuses on a band of kind of performing travelers that travel from town to town or settlement to settlement where there's still people, and they perform plays and they sing. And I think this is a beautifully written book. There's not, if you're looking for a huge amount of action, you know, a lot of kind of action driven, this is not it. But the story of these people and the writing and the relationships and kind of the grappling, sort of really getting into the psyche of how would that feel? Can you imagine that actually happening today? And, you know, how would that feel, and how would those relationships develop, and what would happen, and what would the world look like? And I love that about this book. It's beautiful, and I highly recommend it. If you're not an action-driven apocalypse sort of sci-fi reader, this would definitely be the book for you. It's very character-driven and it's very beautifully written. Then the next one I have is this one over here. So from no action to actually a lot of action is this book, The Girl with All the Gifts. I love this book. So I just read this probably about a week ago. And again, I'm kind of toying with doing a full review because I loved it, and I have to get the follow-up to this, which is actually a prequel, I realized. So this book is, so it's kind of more, it is, I think it is in the sci-fi sort of horror section of the bookstore, but it is basically, again, to me, it's a post-apocalyptic book. So I don't want to, if you don't know, I mean, a lot of people do know, but if you don't know the driver in this, I don't really want to give it away, but you've got certain people that have certain mutations, and this book kicks off. Now, this book is very, at the beginning is hard to read for me because you're dealing with a child, and this is right at the beginning of the book, a child basically being locked up. And it's very jarring, and it's very emotional. And this whole book, there's a lot of action in this, and there's like fight sequences, and so if you like action, this book does include it. But it has, for me, the beating heart of this book is kind of the issue around morality and about feelings and about how do you treat people and what truly makes someone human, and again about those interpersonal relationships. And it is so beautifully written. I would go into it completely blind if you don't already know about this. But it literally, it's a long book, and I finished it so quickly because it gripped me. It's definitely one that I want to read again. And like I said, the follow-up is gorgeous. And again, if you like character-driven with action, this one is definitely the book for you. And the next one, so if you're more into the sci-fi kind of Star Trek spaceship part of science fiction, then I would absolutely recommend this one. The Long Way to a Small and Angry Planet. So Becky Chambers, she's written this book, and then there's two others kind of in this series that I haven't read yet, but again, I'm dying to get to them. I've got such a huge pile of books that I'm dying to get to. This one is set on a spaceship. And again, it's basically that Earth has kind of imploded a little bit, and we've now colonized space. And you have this group of people on the spaceship, and they tunnel holes in space to kind of make bridges to get to different planets. But again, what this book is about the people and about the relationships. And you've got different species, and you've got essentially queer relationships. And it is so clever in the way it explores these relationships, and again, explores what it means to be human, explores humanity. You've got IA. There's a wonderful sequence with the IA in this book, and then it kind of follows on in the next one. And again, it's beautifully written, but it really is about the people. There's action in this as well. There's some great storylines in this that you'll love. I think if you like the action piece and you like the kind of Star Trek part of it, but what I loved is the relationships between the people and kind of the exploration of humanity in this book. Then the next one I've got is this one over here. It's A Study in Honor by Claire O'Dell. Again, the follow-up is coming out this year of this, and it's basically a retelling of Sherlock Holmes with two queer ladies of color as the main protagonists, so Sherlock and Holmes. And again, it's set in post-apocalyptic America. And this is more, so I said I didn't really like politics. This is a little bit of political intrigue, it's mystery, it's based on Sherlock Holmes. But what I loved about it, I kind of liked that post-apocalyptic setting and kind of the technology in that. And I love the fact that we had two women representing Sherlock and Watson, and it just made the whole thing really interesting. So I would recommend this. I really enjoyed it. And then the last one that I would highly recommend is this one over here. It's Slow River by Nicola Griffith, and this is a SF Masterworks. And I was afraid to read this. Yeah, but I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It's one of my favorite books of the year. And again, it's sort of, maybe not necessarily post-apocalyptic, but this is very far in the future. You know, a lot of sort of technology. We've got chips in our skin that are just red, that you know, contain our money, our details, our identity, all of this. So that element is really interesting. But what this book is about the characters, and about the two main characters and their relationship. It's beautifully queer. It's sort of 99% female characters. It grapples with family, it grapples with abuse, it grapples with control, addiction, relationships, how you get addicted to people, survival, what you will do to survive. It is fantastic. And I highly recommend this book if you're a character. There is a plot, but if you're a character-driven reader and you like that kind of grappling with sort of morals and humanity and character, I recommend this. So anyway, so those are the books I recommend. Thanks for listening. I will speak to you all again, and bye-bye.